The Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the world today, admired by millions who visit the Louvre every year. But over a century ago, this masterpiece was at the heart of the greatest art heist in history. In the summer of 1911, Paris became the stage for a daring crime that shocked the world, dragged famous names like Pablo Picasso and J.P. Morgan into scandal, and forever changed the way people viewed Leonardo da Vinci's mysterious portrait. What started as a simple theft soon turned into a story filled with deception, mystery, and conspiracy, one that still fascinates us today. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on history's most shocking mysteries and thrilling true stories. Paris in the summer of 1911. It was a hot summer in Paris. The city was suffering from a record-breaking heat wave. Streets were empty, people preferred to stay inside, and even the Louvre Museum was quieter than usual. The heavy silence of the city created the perfect chance for a bold plan. No one imagined that inside the Louvre, one man was waiting for the right moment to strike. A thief in disguise. The man was Vincenzo Peruggia, a 29-year-old Italian handyman. He had worked at the Louvre before and knew the museum's weaknesses. Dressed in a white worker's uniform, he blended in with the employees and slipped into a small closet. He stayed hidden all night while the museum emptied. The next morning, he walked into the salon car and stood before the Mona Lisa. At that time, the Mona Lisa was not the most famous painting in the world. It did not have a special room or constant guards. But Peruggia knew it was valuable and easy to take. He removed it from the wall, carried it to a stairwell, and used a screwdriver to free it from its protective case. Then he wrapped it in a white sheet and headed toward the exit. Escaping the Louvre, the thief faced one small problem. The exit door was locked. Just then, a plumber appeared. Thinking Peruggia was a museum worker, he kindly helped him open the door. Within minutes, the thief vanished into the streets of Paris with the Mona Lisa under his arm. The greatest art heist in history was done in silence, without a single guard noticing. The delay in discovery. For 28 hours, no one realized the painting was missing. At the time, museum staff were moving artworks around for photography. Empty spaces on the wall were normal. But when the photographers arrived the next day to photograph the Mona Lisa and could not find it, panic spread quickly. By then, the painting was long gone. The worldwide shock. News spread rapidly. The Mona Lisa had been stolen from the Louvre. The French police launched an immediate investigation. Detectives searched the museum and found only the empty frame and a single fingerprint. Newspapers announced the shocking theft, and the whole world reacted. Rewards were offered for information, and tips poured in from everywhere. Some claimed the painting was on a train in Belgium, others said it was on a ship bound for America. Theories multiplied, and the case grew larger than anyone could have imagined. The investigation and famous suspects. The police began questioning suspects. Witnesses reported seeing a man leaving the Louvre with something bulky. But descriptions were inconsistent. Soon, suspicion fell on Pablo Picasso, the famous artist. A secretary confessed that Picasso had bought stolen Iberian statues from the Louvre. The statues were confirmed by serial numbers, and Picasso was arrested for questioning. Though shocked and humiliated, Picasso denied stealing the Mona Lisa. In the end, there was no evidence, and he was released. Attention then turned to J.P. Morgan, the wealthy American banker and art collector. Rumors spread that he had secretly commissioned the theft to add the Mona Lisa to his collection. Police even searched ships entering New York, but they found nothing. The investigation continued for 2 years. Despite all the suspects and endless theories, the Mona Lisa's location remained a mystery, hidden in plain sight. The truth was far simpler than anyone imagined. The Mona Lisa was sitting in Peruggia's small apartment just 2 miles from the Louvre. He had built a trunk with a false bottom and kept the painting hidden there. Police had even visited his apartment twice during the investigation but found nothing. The only real clue, a fingerprint, did not help because it was from his left hand, while only his right hand prints were on record. Fate had protected him. Peruggia's mistake. For 2 years, Peruggia quietly kept the Mona Lisa hidden. But eventually, he grew restless. In 1913, he wrote an anonymous letter to an art dealer in Florence, signing it Leonardo. He claimed he had the Mona Lisa and wanted to return it to Italy, believing it belonged to his homeland. The dealer met Perugia in his hotel room. When he opened the trunk and revealed the painting, the dealers were shocked it was real. They pretended to support his plan, but instead, they informed the police. Soon, Perugia was arrested, and the Mona Lisa was recovered at last. The trial and aftermath. In Italy, Perugia was not seen as a criminal but as a patriot. Many Italians believed he had done the right thing by bringing the Mona Lisa home. He was sentenced to only 7 months in prison, a light punishment for such a daring crime. Perugia lived only another decade, dying in obscurity. But the Mona Lisa returned to the Louvre, now more famous than ever. The theft had turned it into the most recognized painting in the world. The forgery theory. The theft of the Mona Lisa is already one of the most famous crimes in art history, but what makes it even more fascinating is the twist that came years later. For a long time, people believed that Vincenzo Perugia, a former Louvre worker, had acted alone when he stole the painting in 1911. His story was simple. He wanted to return the painting to Italy because he felt it had been stolen from his country by France. That explanation seemed straightforward and even patriotic, and after Perugia's arrest in 1913, most people thought the case was closed. But in 1932, 2 decades later, a journalist named Carl Decker published an article that shook this version of the story. He claimed that Perugia had not been the true mastermind of the heist. According to Decker, the real brain behind the operation was a man named Eduardo de Valfierno. Unlike Perugia, who was just a handyman with access to the museum, Valfierno was described as a con man and art forger with an ambitious scheme. If Decker's story is to be believed, the theft of the Mona Lisa was not about patriotism at all but about money, forgery, and trickery on an international scale. Decker claimed that Valfierno had come up with a plan that was both brilliant and daring. His idea was not to steal the Mona Lisa to keep it or even to sell the original. Instead, the theft was meant to create a situation where fake versions of the Mona Lisa could be passed off as real. Valfierno, according to the article, hired a highly skilled painter to create 6 perfect copies of the Mona Lisa. These copies were not casual reproductions. They were carefully made to look exactly like the real painting, with the same style, the same details, and even an aged appearance so that they would seem centuries old. The painter's name was never revealed, which adds another layer of mystery to the story. The plan was simple in concept but risky in execution. Valfierno intended to sell each of these 6 forgeries to wealthy collectors in America. At the time, many millionaires in the United States were desperate to own European art, especially famous pieces from the Renaissance. These collectors often did not have the training to distinguish a real masterpiece from a forgery. Their desire to possess something rare and their willingness to pay vast sums of money made them easy targets for someone like Valfierno. But there was one major problem. How could he convince these collectors that his copies were the real Mona Lisa? This is where the actual theft of the original painting came in. Valfierno allegedly knew that as long as the Mona Lisa remained safely displayed in the Louvre Museum in Paris, no one would ever believe his fakes were real. So, to give credibility to his scheme, he needed the real painting to disappear. According to Decker, Valfierno turned to Perugia for this part of the job. Because Perugia had once worked at the Louvre, he was familiar with the museum and its routines. He was also Italian and might have been persuaded that he was helping to bring the Mona Lisa home. In this version of events, Perugia was simply a tool, hired to do the physical work of removing the painting so that Valfierno's forgeries could be sold with a convincing backstory. When the Mona Lisa was stolen in August 1911, the world reacted with shock. Newspapers across Europe and America covered the theft in dramatic headlines. The Louvre closed its doors for a week, investigators scrambled for answers, and rumors spread about who could have taken the masterpiece. It was in this atmosphere of confusion and excitement that Valfierno supposedly shipped his 6 forgeries across the Atlantic. Each forgery was sold privately to a wealthy American collector, with Valfierno claiming that it was the real Mona Lisa stolen from the Louvre. Since the original had vanished and no one knew where it was, each buyer could believe they had secretly purchased the world's most famous stolen painting. The genius of this alleged scheme lies in its psychology. None of the buyers could ever reveal their possession publicly, because admitting to owning stolen art could ruin them. They would keep the painting hidden, believing they had acquired something priceless, while Valfierno walked away with their money. Meanwhile, the real Mona Lisa remained hidden in Perugia's possession until he was finally caught 2 years later. By that time, if Decker's story is true, Valferno had already made a fortune selling his copies. The recovery of the original in 1913 did not matter to him, his business was already done. But the question remains, is this story true? Historians have debated it for decades. One problem is that Carl Decker never provided solid evidence for his claims. He said he had met Valferno in Mexico before the man's death and heard the confession directly from him. Yet no documents, no letters, and no surviving forgeries have ever been found to confirm it. The absence of physical proof makes many scholars suspicious. Some believe Decker invented the entire story as a way to sell newspapers. It certainly made for an exciting article. The idea that the Mona Lisa theft was part of a massive forgery scam captured the imagination of readers. On the other hand, the Valferno theory explains certain mysteries. For example, why would Perugia, a simple handyman, risk everything to steal such a famous painting? His patriotic explanation was touching, but it does not account for his later attempt to sell the painting for money. If he truly wanted to return it to Italy as a national treasure, why did he try to profit from it? The Valferno story suggests that Perugia may have been motivated by more than patriotism, perhaps influenced or manipulated by someone with bigger plans. Another reason the theory has supporters is the context of the time. The early 20th century saw many cases of art forgery, and rich American collectors were often tricked into buying fakes. The art market was booming, but authentication techniques were not as advanced as they are today. It is not impossible to believe that multiple buyers could have been fooled by convincing copies, especially if they were told a dramatic story about owning the world's most famous stolen painting. Still, the lack of evidence cannot be ignored. If 6 copies of the Mona Lisa were sold to American millionaires, where are they now? No such paintings have ever surfaced. Perhaps they remain hidden in private collections, passed down quietly through families who never questioned their authenticity. Or perhaps they never existed at all. The mystery is part of what makes the Valferno story so compelling. Even though historians cannot agree on its truth, the Valferno twist has become a permanent part of the legend of the Mona Lisa. It transforms the theft from a simple act of patriotism or greed into a story of global deception. It introduces the idea that the painting we see today in the Louvre might not be the only Mona Lisa with a fascinating history. Somewhere out there, perhaps in the shadows of private collections, there could be forgeries that once convinced rich men they owned a priceless treasure. In the end, the story of Eduardo de Valferno may or may not be real, but it adds a layer of intrigue that has kept people talking for nearly a century. It reminds us that sometimes myths grow alongside facts and that the line between history and legend can blur. Whether Valferno was a clever mastermind or just a fictional character created by a journalist, his story ensures that the Mona Lisa heist will always remain one of the greatest mysteries in the world of art. The legacy of the heist, the Mona Lisa heist, changed history. It exposed the weaknesses of one of the greatest museums in the world. It showed how one determined man could trick an entire system. Most importantly, it turned the Mona Lisa into a legend. Today, millions of visitors travel to the Louvre every year just to see the painting. Protected by bulletproof glass and constant security, it is now one of the most guarded works of art in existence. People come not only to admire Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece but also to remember the time it vanished and captured the imagination of the whole world. The true story behind the Mona Lisa heist is a mix of courage, luck, foolish mistakes, and clever deception. Whether you believe it was the work of a lone thief or part of a larger forgery scheme, one thing is certain: the Mona Lisa would never have been as famous without that daring theft in 1911. The Mona Lisa heist was more than just a theft, it was a turning point in history. A painting that had once been admired quietly became the most recognized artwork in the world, all because it vanished for 2 years. The story of Vincenzo Perugia's daring move, the global manhunt, and the mysterious forgery theory tied to Eduardo de Valferno has kept the legend alive for over a century. Whether you believe it was a lone act of patriotism or part of a brilliant con, one thing is certain: without the theft of 1911, the Mona Lisa might never have become the global icon it is today. If this story amazed you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Tell us in the comments, do you think Perugia acted alone, or was Valferno really the mastermind? And of course, make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories from history that will keep you hooked.